Hey everyone, so in this video I want to demystify response streaming and the OpenAI API. If you ever work with this API, you're going to have to eventually contend with the fact that streaming responses is usually necessary for a good AI powered application. Not always, but definitely usually. So what the heck is response streaming? Now the best way I can describe what it looks like is to show you ChatGPT. So let's go into ChatGPT and I'll show you how it works. So now I'm in ChatGPT and I'm about to show you what response streaming looks like. So I already have my prompt written here, rewrite the song 99 Problems by Jay-Z from the perspective of an elephant. So I'm gonna press enter and watch. This is what response streaming looks like. You can tell that the AI is kind of looks like it's thinking about what to say, and it's giving you each word as it comes in. This is what response streaming looks like. Okay? Now, let me demonstrate to you on a visceral level why you might want this kind of behavior in your application by presenting the alternative. So this is one of the first apps that I made when I started working with the OpenAI API. It's an exam generator that accepts a topic, a grade level, number of questions, a number of possible choices per question. Okay? If you want to check it out for yourself, I'll leave a link to the repo in the description. Now, let's say I wanted to generate a really long exam using this application. So let's say we want to make an exam on US history. The grade is 12th grade. Let's make it 5. Not a long exam, but it's long enough to demonstrate my point. So now we're going to click Generate Exam. Now notice it just says loading, and there is no evidence right now that it's actually working behind the scenes. It literally just says loading. Okay? So notice how long that took. It just waited until the response was fully generated to actually show you everything, right? You were probably wondering if the app was even working. I mean, I remember when I first started building this, I was wondering if it was working. That's definitely not the feeling you want to give your users. So streaming is good UX, and it's worth figuring out how to wield in your own work. So stick around and I'll show you a way to get started. So this is a simple React app that I built in order to play around with streaming. It's basically a bootleg ChatGPT, where it's exactly like the real thing, just not as well styled, but not really the point here. So I'm just going to type something here to prove that it works. So let's say, can you give me 10 reasons to consider programming as a career? Okay, let's generate response. And now look, this is now it's responding. All right, it's asking for a chocolate bar. It's actually telling me, okay, that's not really the response I was expecting, but that's not the point. The point is that it is working. Notice how it is streaming. All right, so now let's jump into the code and I will show you how it works. Okay, so this is the root app right here. Basically, we're choosing between completion API and the chat API. We're actually going to focus on the chat API because OpenAI recently announced that they plan to deprecate their completion API. So just pretend this doesn't exist, and we are going to look at this component right here, okay? So let's go into the chat. All right, so the way it works is that we have a few pieces of state, loading, we have the prompt, and that is updated through user input. You see text area on change, handle change, set prompt to whatever the value is, and then we have the stream, which is an empty string, just like prompt, and then this is where we feed in our text as it comes in, okay? And this is mainly for UI purposes. It's an array of, like, you know, a conversation between the user and the AI, okay? So now we also have this callback function. This is the most important part to understand here. Every chunk that comes in, we're going to set the stream to whatever's already in there plus the new chunk, okay? And we're gonna see that in action later. All right. So this is a class instantiation of the chat API right here that I made, and that's going to be over here. So when we first load the component, we're gonna load up a new chat. We're gonna give it our chat configuration, which is up here, and the callback, which is right here. So chat config, we're passing in the model, and this is the main reason that you want to use this API. The completion API does not have access to GPT-4, but the chat completion API does. So always use chat completion, okay? All right, so let's talk about all of this stuff right here, okay? So this is basically saying that if a model is not recognized, it's just going to throw an error. This is the callback that we're going to invoke, which is going to be this guy right here, okay? So keep this in mind. We're going to update the stream state using this function here, okay? And we're passing that into here. This is going to be necessary for later. This is the URL that we are going to use to make a call to the API. This is the model, which we got from here. Now, this is an essential component to the chat API, okay? The messages array, okay? So you want to initiate it with one object with the key of role and system. And this is basically where you tell the AI what kind of role it takes on, okay? And so that's what this purpose here is. Content is purpose, and if you don't put anything in here, it's going to default to you are a helpful assistant, which I believe is what ChatGPT does. So we have purpose. Purpose is right here. Right now it's set to you are a rude teenager who's really smart and knows the answer to every question thrown at them, but you will only answer them if the user gives you something. That's why I was asking for chocolate. I don't know why it streamed the rest of it, but neither here nor there. All right? And so this is more configuration. You know, I would consult the API docs to learn more about this stuff. Right now, you just need to understand these two. And of course, our API key, right? And of course, we set the API key right here, all right? So hopefully, if you have an API key, this will work. All right, the user types in their prompt. They click the submit button, generate response, and then this gets invoked. So we are preventing the default action. We're going to set loading to true, set chat history to whatever's already in there, plus the prompt, and then we're creating an empty string for the response. Let's jump into the create response function, all right? So if there's no API key, throw an error, all right? We're pushing our prompt into the messages array. Again, you want role and content. The role in this case is user, and then the content is going to be whatever your prompt is, all right? So now we're gonna make our call to OpenAI, all right? And we're gonna get our reader so that we can stream the response. So we're calling this function. Const params, this API params, basically we're just getting all these values here. That's really all this is. Okay, and now we're sending off our response using the fetch API, passing in the URL. It's always going to be a post request, and you're passing in your API key in the headers. You're sending it as JSON, your params. This is the magic key right here. Stream is set to true, okay? And then we're going to return the reader, okay? We're going to do response.body.getReader, all right? That's very important. So now let's go back here. So we have our reader. So now we're going to initiate a while loop that just runs until the stream is over. So you could just say while true, but this is just a little more readable. And then we're going to initialize an empty string so that we can gather the response as it's accumulated. We're going to need it later. All right, so while streaming, what we're going to do is for every chunk that comes in, we're going to read it. You're going to get an object that has two keys, done and value. Done is exactly what it sounds like, whether or not the stream is done, and value is whatever the value is. And it's going to be, I believe, a uint array, so we're going to have to do some decoding on that, but we'll get there. So if it's done, we'll set streaming to false, and we'll break out at the while loop. Otherwise, we're going to add to the response this dot add value. Now let's jump into that right over here. So we are decoding it from our decoder, which is basically, where is it? Right here. Text decoder, UTF-8. Okay, so now we're decoding the value. This will transform it from a uint array to a string that we can then parse. Okay, so this is our parse function that I wrote. Please don't make me explain everything here. This is just, we're basically turning this into an actual object that we can get information out of. So just, that's all you need to know about what's going on here, all right? So assume that this is going to return an object that looks something like this right here, okay? This is what each chunk is going to be, okay? It's gonna give you an object. We're gonna want this right here, okay? After I parse it, I'm initiating an empty string just in case there's more than one line, and so we can add to that chunk. So we're gonna iterate through each of the lines. I'm gonna get the content of each line by doing choices, first index, delta, and if there's anything in there, we're gonna run our callback, which is basically this right here, okay? We pass in the chunk, and we're just setting the stream to basically whatever's already in there plus the chunk. And then we're gonna add the content to the chunk, we're gonna return it, and then we're gonna add that to, where is it? We're gonna add that to the response, and then this is just gonna keep repeating until we are done and break out of the loop. And then we are going to add in our response into our messages array. So messages.push. Now we have the assistant. This is basically the AI's response right here. And then we're basically setting the content to be response. Okay, so this is basically how ChatGPT remembers everything you say so that you don't have to keep repeating yourself every single time. Okay, so that's about it. I mean, I know that was quite a doozy. There's a lot to streaming. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.